What's up, everyone? True Techno Gamer back at it, and getting to the end of the year, and I have a bunch of content, man, that I think you guys are going to enjoy. Trying to close out the year good. I've done a lot down here this year. I've talked about it already, but we're going to kind of put it all together, wrap it up, and I'm going to try to give you some of the last bits of follow-up to certain things, starting with what is my final impressions of the GIK acoustics room treatment. That was a big thing. I already made 2 videos where I talked about my motivation, I talked about the plan, and now we have the results. So everything is up on the wall. I've been living with it now for what, a couple of months, maybe about 2 months or so. What do I think? Is it true what they say that the room and room acoustics and sound panels make the biggest difference in your home theater? Have I met the 3 goals, right? If you go back to my previous videos, I outlined 3 specific goals that I wanted to achieve with these sound panels, right? So have I done that? All of that and more after the intro. Hey guys, all right, so let's do a quick tour of what I did, right, in terms of the sound panels and where I placed them and why. So, you guys familiar with my room? Here's the front. So this is the right side. So this is the first reflection point from the speaker. I have 2 5.25-inch bass traps, essentially, absorption traps. They get down to 80 hertz. So this is kind of meant to capture the first reflection point. I doubled up 2 of them here to make sure I got adequate coverage on the first reflection point. Previously, I kind of had one, and then I had the poster in between. And you know, the folks at GIK saw that and was like, that poster is still kind of in that first reflection point area, and it's causing trouble for sure because sound is going to bounce even heavier than it would on the wall off that poster. So I moved the posters back. Now they're kind of out of the first reflection point area, and I just doubled up the panels here. So that was why I did that. And then what I kind of did here was I just like the idea of, for aesthetically as well as functionally, adding some mixed sound panels here, meaning a mix of absorption and diffusion. This is kind of behind, you know, the first reflection point. But I like the idea of, I have these, you know, bipole surround speakers, right, that I love. So sound is coming out of these things, bouncing off the wall here on both sides. So on both sides of these, I kind of still wanted to keep some of the liveliness. The whole purpose of these surround speakers is to create a wide sound field that does rely on some reflections, right? It bounces sound off of the wall to give a wider sensation of sound. So I don't want to absorb and kill that, right? There are bipoles, so there is some directed sound too, but a lot of that width is kind of what is the magic of these surround speakers. So I like the idea of keeping some diffusion there to kind of keep some of the liveliness around it. That's all. And then aesthetically, you know, I just kind of like the mix up there. So I was consistent, right? I did it there. I did it in the back, as you can see. I'll go back there, and I did it on this side, right? So that was what the right side looks like now. I had no sound panels in this stairwell here, so this is what I wound up doing. I did the mirror test for the first reflection point from this speaker here, and it turns out, technically, it would be kind of right along this, this spindle area here for my stairwell, right? I wasn't gonna try to put a sound panel somehow in the front of this thing. I just didn't, again, I thought that would kind of look ugly, frankly, and just be awkward. So I just went back and did it on the wall. And that first reflection point actually was here, which is why I put a absorption panel there. I had this light switch I wanted to keep obviously open. You know, I have to use it when I come down here. So I have some stuff flanking it. This is on a elevated part. This is a riser. I kind of like the idea of having another absorption panel here, just because there's so much sound that can kind of come and still kind of bounce off this wall, kind of in this corner. Again, this is a bass trap, right? Goes down to 80 hertz. So I kind of have a bass trap in this corner, right? That's kind of one way to look at this. And this is why I think part of the reason why this was a hot area for sure for bass. This was a really hot, like the bass in this stairwell was super elevated, like really, really pressurizing, shaking everything, rattling stuff. It was crazy compared to what you would hear in here. So this kind of tames that. And now because those extra bass notes aren't getting back into the room, it'll help overall with the nulls and the peaks, which I can notice for sure. So that was that. And then once again, I have the diffusion panels flanking both sides of the surround to keep, again, some of the liveliness. The other thing that I think about, you probably look at these square, you're like, why is it there? It's kind of a weird location. Well, I do have a second row back here, right? This kind of bar area. And sometimes people are sitting up here. So when you look to the left here, that sound panel is actually, directly to the left and to the right of the second row. So again, I kind of like the idea of diffusing some sound back to them, back to this area, right? And still having some level of treatment so you're just not getting a bunch of reflected sounds from back here as well, right? And then finally in the rear, this was an extra 2-inch panel that I had from my previous, sound panels. This wall was just empty back here, so I just used it to put something up there. I had it, it's extra. I'm not thinking it's doing a whole lot, but it does help a little bit with just the sheer amount of echo back here, and just kind of keeping a more consistent look as well with the panels around. So that's what that's for. And then once again, flanking both surrounds, I got the diffusion alpha panels, the hybrid panels, right? So there's still 4-inch absorption in there, but then there's some scattering on the front. And I got the longer one, of course, just to get more wall coverage than like what I did over here. And then I also got, again, it was, I thought, aesthetically symmetrical and consistent. When I had it, there was this big opening below this clock. And I just thought it would be good to get more wall coverage. And they don't make, in this size at least, they don't make the alpha hybrid panel. So I actually just got a absorption panel here. And I think it looks okay. I think it looks good. Again, functionally speaking, it's hard for me to say exactly what that particular panel is contributing to. But all I can say is that there is, in general, a lot more coverage back here. And I could hear it. This area back here was super echoey. And now, it's much better. Much better. I mean, there's still, ceilings here. There's still this whole area over here. But it's much, much better when we're around here at the pool table and talking and music is still playing and coming out here. It just is a lot better where it's not sound just going all over the place. And finally, I would say probably one of my favorite parts of the panels is the ceiling. I think the look of them actually came out pretty good. It adds a lot. They're hanging down. These are the cloud panels, but they're not too low. I didn't want to get too thick. So the ones up here are actually 3 inches, a little bit more than 3 inches. They're not quite the 5 1/4 inches ones that I have on the wall, but I think they look great. They were kind of fun to put up, honestly. And they do, I think, they have the single biggest effect on the vocal clarity coming from the center channel here. I really can hear that difference. And, I think the location of them relative to my like kind of seating row here and relative to the speaker row is just perfect. It really is. So this was an important piece, man. To add this piece on the ceiling, it helped a lot, especially with the vocal clarity, but just taming a lot of the reflections going around in space. So there you have it. Like I said, I was nothing more. I was consistent. So I have 6 panels now in the rear here where I had 0. I have 4 panels in the stairwell here where I had 0 before, right? So that's 10 panels. I have now a thicker panel here, 11. I got 2 corner bass traps there, that's 13. I got the 4 cloud panels, 2 by 4 feet, 4 of them, filling up that area great, right? So now that's what, 17? I still got the 2 flat panels flanking the TV, kind of mostly for aesthetic purposes, but I think they add to it as well. That's 19. And then I have 4 panels on this wall as well. And there you go. That's 23, right? So the full total picture there, 23 panels. All right, so let's recap what I actually did in terms of what I, purchased and installed the GIK acoustic panels to help with the overall room acoustics in my room. Okay, I went over the plan with you guys before, and I pretty much stuck to that. All right, so basically, what I did was I increased the number of panels, essentially the amount of wall coverage I have in this space dramatically. Right, previously I only had 5 panels in the room. Okay. I only had 2 panels over here. I had 2 slim panels flanking my TV, and I had 1 panel kind of near the stairwell above the round seat area I have over there. And that was it. I didn't have anything in the stairwell over there. I didn't have anything in the rear part of my room. I didn't have anything on the ceiling. So I went and I had the bass traps. I did have the bass traps in the corner there. So technically 6 total panels. I went from that to now having roughly 20 panels in the room. So I increased the number of panels by a factor of 3, more than 3 actually, right? And significantly increased the amount of walls that have some sound absorption going on, okay? Not only did I do that, the panels that I got are actually different, and I would say more advanced and thicker. And what that is doing is allowing me to absorb lower frequencies as well. So I talked about this before, but most of the panels that I have around the wall now are at least 4 inches thick, whereas previously the few that I had were only 2 inches thick. All right. So now I more than doubled the thickness of each panel, which means I get absorption down to about 80 hertz. So I'm getting a lot more bass, upper bass absorption than I did before. And that should hopefully help with some of the bass response and the nulls and peaks and room modes and stuff like that, right? So if you also, I didn't just go full on absorption everywhere. I still wanted to keep some of the liveliness in the room. So I have most absorption, and then in several cases, I have basically what are called hybrid panels, right? So they're 4 inches thick. These are the GIK Alpha series panels, right? They're 4 inches thick, but they have a scatter plate on the front, mathematically calculated to scatter the sound in a certain way. And essentially what that does is it absorbs a lot of the most problematic frequencies in terms of like the mid-range, to prevent or to try to keep the vocal clarity levels high. So you're not getting that comb filtering from a lot of the mid-range frequencies, which is where a lot of the vocals and the voices are actually heard, right? So that level is mostly absorption, but it does reflect a lot of the upper frequencies, right? So the highs, to kind of keep a little bit more liveliness in the room, it still does that. So I've kind of strategically scattered those around on my sides and rear. For the most part, the recommendation is always to, if you are going to use scatter or hybrid or diffusion plates, do it in the rear of the room. I have a big gap in the rear of my room, as you guys know. So that was a logical place to do that. So definitely in the back, I have mostly diffusion or some scatter, hybrid diffusion, hybrid absorption panels. And then I also have some absorption back there as well. And then on the sides, I kind of, alternate, right? So I have diffusion, scattering, but then I have in the main, this is kind of like the first reflection point here. I have full on absorption over there as well on the stairwell. I have kind of a mixture of both, but I have kind of half and half, right? So lots more wall coverage, guys. And, does it make a difference? Right? Can I hear a difference, man? I think I don't need to remind you guys. I put up this short when I first installed them, and I was super ecstatic. It was my fresh, raw feedback, raw emotions, and man, as I was putting them up, I had music playing just kind of in the background, but I just kind of wanted to hear if I noticed anything as I was doing it. And of course, the answer was no, right? As I was doing it, I was putting everything around, and I was just like, okay, everything still sounds the same. Can't really tell. But once I finished everything and actually sat down in my main listening seat and put on the first song, I was blown away, guys. And I said this in that short. I mean, I still, it's hard to believe that it was just the sound panels that made that difference, right? So it was just like I literally had gotten new speakers. It was that big of a jump. It was just like, I've never heard my system, anything in my house sound like that and as good, right? And again, all I did at the time was change the panels or install the panels. So I was like, man, so needless to say, I mean, I'm obviously getting kind of used to that now, kind of used to that sound, but I'll go with that first impression. And, again, overall, I noticed differences throughout the months I've been using them. But, did it really, is there a difference? Absolutely. I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing. And the question, like, do sound panels really make the biggest difference in your audio system? I'm going to have to agree with that, guys. Based on my initial impressions, that was the single biggest leap or jump or the difference that I have heard in my room, bar none. New speakers, power, cabling, processor, everything, amp. That was the single thing where I was just like, whoa, this doesn't even sound like my system as I just heard it, as I remembered it, right? So it was a huge difference, guys. And over time, again, I got more used to it. It's not like it was as stark to me, but I can definitely tell what it's doing. So let me go back to those 3 goals that I had, right? When I talked about the motivation of why I wanted to get sound panels in the first place, okay? The first thing was a more intimate sound, I called it, right? This was the idea of lowering the noise floor and getting that feeling like you kind of get in a movie theater, you kind of get in a really high-end 2-channel setup, if you've heard those, where it's just like you and the music. It's just you and the sound. You're in the movie. It's a lot more immersion to it. I felt that there was a sense that sound was just getting scattered all throughout my room. And, that comb filtering was definitely in effect here. And believe it or not, even if it was subtle, your brain knows that difference, right? That sound is still coming at different times to your ear, right? I detected that. So I wanted to kind of make that better, try to hone that in a little bit. And I think the result is that there's absolutely improvement there. When I'm now watching anything, gaming, movies, music, there is a bigger sense of intimacy for sure. What that really means is that I feel like I'm able to literally see deeper into the sound, especially with music, right? I mean, there's a sense like it's the sound station, again, with these speakers and everything is great. But now it's like the sense that the stage is right there in front of me is even greater. Okay. Absolutely. I've heard this now, like I said, for several months. It is there. And it's not quite like a night and day difference in that regard. Like, oh my gosh, now it's, because there's still room for improvement for sure. This room is still big. It's still a big room, right? As I have, like I said, triple the sound panels, but there's still a lot of space for sound to travel. There's still some wall space that's not covered. And there's really nothing I can do about that in this space, or nothing I'm going to do about that in this space, right? I have, I think, adequate coverage. Went over the plan with the GIK folks, and this was kind of like, I think, the minimum to really get the effect, and I'm getting the effect, right? But this is still, again, not a dedicated room. This is a rec room. My kids are down here. Play dates are down here. Other adults come back down here. We're just hanging out. It's not all about the home theater aspect and stuff like that. So the acoustics, the aesthetics matter to me a lot. I've talked about that. I didn't want too many panels everywhere and stuff to just kind of look weird. I mean, it's already took some getting used to, I think, but my wife seems to be cool with it and okay with it. And folks that have come down here are just kind of like, wow, okay, but it's not too obtrusive, right? It's still somewhat out the way. Lights are off, you wouldn't notice them. And generally around the room, nothing is in your way. And that's intentional. So it definitely is an improvement with the more intimate sound. Is it the same effect that I would get if I had a nice, smaller, dedicated, enclosed theater room with adequate sound treatments? Probably not. And I'm aware of that, right? But it's a big improvement there. So kudos to there. If I had to give a grade of the improvement for that category, and I'm gonna do this for all 3, I would say a B+. B+. I mean, it's a good improvement, but I know that there's a little bit more there. There we go. Okay. The second thing that I talked about was better dialogue or vocal clarity. This was probably one of the biggest things I wanted to gain. And honestly, this is probably the single biggest difference in my system. And I can tell it with almost everything I hear, right? When I went for that short, my initial raw impressions, I mean, that was the biggest thing. It was the sense of, like, not just the vocals though. I mean, part of it, like I said, is the intimacy. It was just, the sound was just so much more present and realistic. It was the sense of the speakers disappearing and the stage is being there. But specifically with the vocals, man, for movies in particular, it feels like my center channel has finally come alive. See, guys, like if you watch my channel, you heard me when I first reviewed the Paradigm Persona line. I have the Paradigm Persona C. This is a beast of a center channel, man. Right? It's 6 drivers. You know, it's like, I think around 80 pounds or something like that. Has beryllium mid-range, beryllium tweeter in there. It's a really sophisticated center channel. And my initial impressions when I first was just listening to them, when I first got them with movies, was that it wasn't that much better. It definitely wasn't as big of a jump that I heard from the front LR with music, right? When I was watching movies through that center channel compared to my other center channel, right? And I realized over time that wasn't necessarily the speaker. I thought a lot of it had to do with the room. And that's when I kind of started researching more about sound, acoustics, and what that can do. And fundamentally, one of the biggest things that you can gain from controlling a lot of the reflections, right, that's going to go around the room is, to get a better sense of clarity from the vocals from the center channel. And I can absolutely tell you guys that this was a noticeable difference. This was a noticeable improvement. Now, when I watch movies, it just sounds like the center channel is just raised up a level. Best way I could describe it, right? Again, it's not like something that's dramatic and in your face, but now I can really kind of hear into the depth of the sound, the depth of the vocals for music and movies, where I'm like, I can now appreciate some more of the details that center channel is capable of. Where before, it didn't sound very distinct from my previous center channel, right? Now I can hear some more of the qualities of this center channel. There's a sense I don't have to turn up the volume as much. I absolutely got that, right? Like before, turn up the volume, especially with streaming, which is usually you got to turn up the volume anyway, but to just raise it higher so I can hear more vocals, even if the rest of the sound is already too loud and that kind of thing. That, I don't think I really had to do that since, to be honest, since I got the sound panels. It helped a lot with that kind of stuff. It just sounds clearer. It absolutely does. And the real biggest part of that, now, the first reflection point, you want to do that, of course. I tried my best to do it on both sides. The real difference were the cloud panels, the ceiling panels, okay? Those were the last things I installed, and when I finally installed that and sat down, that's where everything came together. Because I think in my room, that was a big problem, right? I have a whole bunch of open ceiling here. My center channel is actually raised fairly high on this stand, and sound would definitely go up. I have carpeting on the bottom, but sound would go up. And once that got covered, because I have a nice coverage now with my kind of mains listening area with the row, the home theater seating row, that's where I really felt it and heard it, right? I heard it with gaming, I heard it with movies, and I heard it with music. So better dialogue clarity, better vocal clarity. I finally feel like I'm getting a lot more out of my center channel for sure, that I can finally kind of hear more of his quality. That's a good upgrade. That's definitely a good upgrade. Again, I'm gonna grade it compared to what I feel like it could be. And once again, I'm gonna give this one an A-. I'm gonna give this one an A-. And it's not perfect. It's not fully an A+. Again, everything is still clear, but I have heard other theaters and other demos where I still kind of just felt a little bit more impressed with the center channel and the vocal clarity. Again, completely apples to oranges because those were different rooms, those were different systems, so I get that. But I'm just saying that I know that there still is an extra layer, an extra notch, that it might be the best I get in this room, but in general, I know that there's a little bit more it can go, right? So, but an A-, it's a big improvement. I definitely was happy with that piece too. Now, the last piece and the third piece that I talked about was getting better bass response. And that's where the bass traps come in, right? And I talked about this. I really didn't get additional dedicated corner bass traps because I don't really have corners to put them in that are relevant, at least. You know, I don't have a corner up in the front right. I don't really have a corner. This is not really a full corner here. And the other corners that are in this room, they're way in the back. They're not even really technically in the theater space. It's just probably not going to be worth an investment there because they're just so far out. But I did, like I said, get bass traps effectively across all of the panels around the room, and you know, can get down to much lower, like 80 hertz range, which is actually lower than the corner bass traps I have actually can get down to, right? So what did that do? This was the most interesting and curious thing for me, and I'll try to explain the best I can. The whole purpose of bass trapping, right, is to absorb the bass so the bass energy isn't going back into the room. And what that can do is that causes conflicts with other bass waves, right? So you might have one bass wave that came out at this time, it goes here and it bounces back here, and then you have another bass wave that might come out later, and bam, they collide. And they kind of interact with each other. And when that happens, it creates one or two extremes. They either cancel each other out, so you get a null and you don't hear that frequency at all from certain positions, or it creates a peak. It's hot energy. The bass sounds elevated, excessively so, right? Unbalancedly so. Now, I can absolutely say that in this room, before getting any of these panels, I definitely got that sensation. There were specific spots, if I walked around my room, where the bass in some cases was just like, whoa, pressurizing everything, like in a spot. And I can take 3 steps over and not hear much of anything. It's like, where is the bass? Is my subwoofer even on? That was a really big thing in this room. You could imagine with the size of it and the awkward shape of it. That was a big thing. So has that improved? Absolutely, yes. I can definitely tell that the amount of those hot spots and cold spots have reduced. I know specifically certain areas. I'm standing in one of them right here. This area here, kind of near the front right speaker, was just excessively bass heavy. Going into this area here, to this bathroom area, if my system was playing, it would often, like, I would knock down like the shampoo and stuff in the shower in there, bass heavy. The stairwell was another really, really hot, heavy area with bass. But then my main seating area in my row, my home theater row here, was a no. Didn't hear as much, right? So walking around those same spots is way more balanced. It is. The area in my seat, I would say this is how I would describe it. I think that the bass response that I get from my main seat is a little bit better, which tells me that maybe the null isn't quite as bad or isn't quite as deep. Again, I have new subs. I've been messing with arc, room correction. I've done a lot to try to optimize that. It's not a dramatic difference, but I can absolutely hear and feel the bass from my main seating area in a way that I probably couldn't before. And it's probably a combination of things. It's probably not just the sound panels, but a little bit of everything, right? But what I would just say is that what I hear in my main seating area now is a lot more consistent with what you might hear in other parts of the room. It's not perfect, right? There still are some areas where it's a little bit higher, hotter, but not nearly as high as it was before, right? There's some areas that might still be a little bit lower, but it's still a little, you can still hear the bass to a degree that it's better than it was before, if that makes sense. So before, the range might have been this, from these peaks to nulls around my room, and now I would say that the range is kind of like this. And my main seating area is kind of right in the middle of that, right? If that makes sense. I can definitely feel that. It's not a dramatic thing in terms of like bass quality. I absolutely can say that the bass is tighter as well. But again, that could be the calibration. That absolutely is also due to the new subs. But the bass is way tighter. It's a lot more audiophile. Like, I know what that is. I know what that means for bass. It definitely is hitting that. It's less boomy. It's more accurate in general. But I think the sound panels in particular, most of the difference there is just in how the response is around the room. And again, improvement. I'm not sure exactly what I was expecting with that. Again, and I don't have full on bass trap. This is where having four corner bass traps would be desirable. This is where maybe like the 8 inch or whatever, the soffit um, panels from GIK would be suitable, but they're just so thick, and I don't really have many places to put them. I just thought that it would be a little bit too obtrusive for me and my needs. But there definitely is further room to go, I guess, to fully tame the bass in this room, right? If you want to say that. But it is an improvement. So again, giving it a score, I would give it a B. I would give that part of it a B. It is positive. Took some getting used to. Bass is tighter. The hot areas are definitely not as hot. I'm getting nice sensation from my main seating area, although it's still not like a hot area for sure. It's not like the full-on pressurization, but I can hear it, I can feel it, I can get that pants flapping sensation that I don't know if I ever got before. Again, previous subs, but previously in my system, I don't know if I ever got that. So I'm able to get that now from my main seating area, and I'm sure that that this all helps and is all part of it. But yeah, I would probably need to go thicker in terms of full-on bass traps to get down to the 40 hertz range, which takes a lot more thickness to get down there, and be able to distribute them in better locations probably around the room. That's just more of a placement thing for me and kind of my willingness to, in terms of how far I'm willing to go with it. So there you have it, guys. I mean, overall, I absolutely feel like it's worth it. I never would want to go in the future when I, move from this place and whatever place I'm in. If I have a theater that I'm really trying to build out and really use, I would never go without adequate sound treatments again, right? Like I said, this is my first foray into it. 25 years or so that I've been in home theater in some way or had some kind of a home theater. I never thought about, never touched room treatments. I just didn't think they were necessary. And I've always had my theaters, like I said, in like regular home spaces, never a dedicated room for that. So I just thought it would be visually not very attractive either, and kind of obtrusive. I didn't want that. But now that I've finally gone down the rabbit hole a bit, I can definitely see the value, definitely hear the value. I wouldn't want to go without it again. Anywhere I go, and if going for, again, how much, right, depending on the room, but I'm going to have something. I'm definitely going to have something where I try to at least cover the floor, the ceiling, and the first reflection points at least, right? Absolutely see the value in that, guys. It has made me feel more than ever before that I am actually finally achieving, that kind of holy grail of realism, of, speaker disappearing, right? Of the sound just sounding real. That's the holy grail that, I've been chasing for 25 years, that all of us audiophiles are chasing. This is the closest I've ever been, by far. In my room, everything is elevated. I can't say enough about that. It really is. But I do know that there's still more that could be done in general. And if I put my system, the same system, in a different room that was probably smaller, but I can put nice room treatments all around it, I can even get more out of the system. That's what I mean, right? That's why it's not an A+. So hit me up in the comments, guys. Till next one, got a lot more coming. I'll talk to you soon. True Techno Gamer, signing off.